We come to a passage today that most of you all probably equate with Easter, and maybe that's really the only time you ever really read it or hear about it. And yet, we know that the arrest of Jesus is more than just one day a week. It should affect us every day of our lives as Christians. And so just to recap what we've learned in the book of John. In the first 17 chapters of John, to bring us up to speed, we have really seen a picture. John's trying to help us understand who Jesus really is. He actually summarizes at the end of the book of John, I have spoken these things to you that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and have life in his name. And so really the whole book of John is about showing us who Jesus is so that we might believe in him. And so we've seen Jesus as the Word made flesh, the one who was pre-existent before creation, who became flesh for us. He took on human form. And we've seen how this Jesus was more than just a man. He did miracles, right? He healed the lame, he gave sight to the blind, and he actually rose people from the dead. And so we've seen, hey, this is who Jesus is, right? It's all leading us to believe in him, to know who he is so that we would follow him. And so we've also seen Jesus claim, look, I am the only way to God. I'm the only way to be saved. It all comes through me. And so all that kind of leads up to the culmination of Jesus' life. And that's what we get to today. For the next 4 weeks, we're going to be looking at his betrayal and his arrest, his crucifixion, his resurrection, and then his kind of parting words with his disciples, with his followers. And in these last 4 weeks, we really see the ultimate revealing of who Jesus is. Because the truth is, all through Jesus' life, even though he was doing all these amazing things out in the open for people to see and to hear, yet they didn't fully understand what he was all about. And we're going to see that today. Even his closest followers didn't understand. And yet the end of his life brings a clarity to who Jesus really is and how he impacts our lives even today. And so a moment ago we heard Chad read the end of John 18 and his interaction, Jesus' interaction with Pilate, the Roman governor in Israel at the time. So leading up to that, and we're going to go back, we're going to kind of start at the beginning and work up to that point. But leading up to it, just so I can kind of set the scene for you guys, they are in the Garden of Gethsemane. So it's Jesus' last night. He's with his disciples. He's been, before we left John 17, we saw him praying, kind of agonizing for his followers and what was ahead of him. And so they are now in the garden. He's just waiting on his arrest. And so we're going to see that Judas is one of his disciples, betrays him and brings these Roman soldiers and the authorities of the Jewish leaders to him to arrest him. They're going to take him away and take him before the Jewish kind of court, where they're going to basically exercise judgment on him, and then they're going to send him on to the Roman governor, which is Pilate, which is what Chad just read. So that's kind of what the storyline that we're going to see today is how Jesus' arrest really went down and what led up to his crucifixion. And so what I really want us to emphasize and kind of keep in mind throughout this whole chapter, normally I don't take a whole chapter at a time, but this whole chapter really points us to the key verse 36. Let me read that. Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight, so that I wouldn't be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this world." And so what we see in John 18 is a picture of how Jesus' kingdom is not like anything in this world. And his kingdom really is different than anything that we know here. And that's what we're going to see. We're going to see a contrast of how this world operates, how the rulers and the people in charge and the authorities of this world live and think and feel versus Jesus. And how he thinks and lives and feels and what he wants us to know. All right? So take note, first of all, Jesus is clearly claiming to be a king. My kingdom is not of this world. Which means if you have a kingdom, you're a king, right? You're claiming to have authority over something, a kingdom. And yet his kingdom is not like here. And so here's what I think God wants us to know as Jesus reveals the fact that he's a king today. Kings have power, right? Kings have influence in this world. They have power over our lives. And they have power to rule over us and to change the way we think, to change the way we live. Well, if Jesus is claiming to be a king, his kingdom is a kingdom over our hearts. He is a king who has power, but he has a kingdom over our hearts and has ultimate power to change our hearts and to change our lives. Right? This is what God wants to show us. That's what his kingdom is all about. It's about you and me and God's rule in our hearts and in our lives. And so as a different kind of king, with a different kind of kingdom, here's the great irony. Jesus is king over all. Right? And so we've seen throughout the book of John how powerful he is. His miracles, for example, show his power and his might. The fact that he came from heaven shows power and his might. And he could have changed his situation in a moment. He's that powerful. And yet, he willingly gave himself up for us. A king who gave himself up for us shows us who God really is. And it shows us what he wants us to know about him. And that's what we're going to see today. Three things we see in John 18. It shows that Jesus is a different kind of king and how he wants to impact your life. All right? So let's just jump in at the beginning, starting verses 1 through 9. We see how King Jesus changes us by his mindfulness of others. He changes us by his mindfulness of others. First thing that stands out in this arrest, and I don't know if you caught this, is that Jesus was putting others before himself. So how many kings do you all know that are really concerned about other people? Or does it always seem that, hey, I'm going to do whatever I can to save my bacon, right? Whatever I can do to get out of the media, and the attacks of the media and the press, I'm going to do whatever I can to make myself look good, right? And no, we may look with a hopeful eye and say, well, this ruler or this king, they really have the best interest of their people in mind. And it's kind of wishful thinking, but hey, sometimes it's true, right? Sometimes I think rulers really do want their nations to succeed. They really do want the people in their nations to have a life that prospers and does well. But to be honest, if any king or any ruler was put in a pinch, right, and they had to choose between their own well-being, their own position, their own authority, versus the well-being of the people under their rule, how many of them would willingly lay themselves down for other people? You know, how many would really do that if push came to shove and they had to own up to, man, it's either me or them, right? And the truth is, we all are geared towards protecting ourselves, even kings and rulers. And we see here Jesus is different, right? Jesus is different. Here's Judas, one of his closest friends, a guy who spent 3 years with him, one of his disciples, right? And he has betrayed him. And so you can just imagine the letdown from that. And so he brings these rulers and these authorities to arrest Jesus. Starting verse 4, let me read that again. Then Jesus, knowing everything that was about to happen to him. So here we see Jesus knows it. He knows what's about to happen to him. And he went out and he said to them, who is it that you're seeking? Could you imagine just going out to the people who are coming to arrest you? Hey, who are you looking for? I'm right here. You know, come, just take me. No, we run for our lives, right? Jesus of Nazareth, they answered. I am he, Jesus told them. Judas, who betrayed him, was also standing with him. And when Jesus told them, I am he, they stepped back and fell to the ground. They were dumbstruck, right? And he asked them, who is it that you're seeking? Jesus of Nazareth, they said. I told you, I am he. And Jesus replied, so if you are looking for me, let these men go. Let these men go. This was to fulfill the words that he had said, I have not lost one of those you have given me. Did you get that? He's more concerned about the people around him, the men around him, and he tells them to let them go than he is about his own arrest. Like, he's thinking about them. Somehow, in all the craziness of being arrested, he's thinking about the people around him. In verse 8, that phrase, let these men go, the Greek word for that is actually the exact same word as forgive. So what is he saying? He's saying, forgive these men. Release these men. Let them go free. And that's what he's saying. Take me, forgive them. Take me, free their lives. And that is exactly what happens. The disciples go free. None of them get arrested. Now they're scared, and they run, and we see that later on in the book of Acts. They're literally hiding in a closet, but they're free. They're not arrested. They're not in jail. They're not killed on the moment at that time. So ultimately, we see, look, Jesus was giving them freedom and forgiveness. beyond what they even understood in that moment. We know that his forgiveness went beyond anything physical. And that's what I think God wants us to realize. Look, Jesus wasn't just giving forgiveness and freedom to them, to those disciples. He was giving it to us. He was literally in that moment of his arrest saying, take me, forgive anybody who will follow me. Let them go free. Let them have true freedom and true life. That's what he was doing on the night of his arrest for you and for me. And that's what he does for us today. And his arrest and his death on a cross brings us ultimate forgiveness and freedom. That's what his arrest was all about. And it's because he was a king who put our eternal interest over his physical interest. He put our eternal life above his physical life. That's the kind of king he was. What other king in the world would do that for you? Do you know any other kings that would do that for you? Here's the King of heaven who did that for you. Think about what that means. Think about the fact that that shows you how much God values you. That he would, the King of all things, come to this earth, take on flesh, and die for you because he loves you. And he values your eternal life and your life now. Your life matters to him. He offers to forgive you and free you, even though we don't deserve it. We know in our heart of hearts, we don't deserve that. How many times have we let God down? How many times? And yet God loves and values you. It also reminds you that God didn't just do that for you. He did that for us. So you look around you to the right and the left, the people in this room, the people all around you. God loves them. If God loves them, why should I not love them too? It changes how we see people. You get that? It changes how we see people in God's eyes. We see his love for all of us. And that changes how we live. Paul in Philippians 2:4 says this. He says, let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. Now, if we just take that verse by itself and we think, well, it's easy for him to say, that person did this to me, or that person made me mad, or they hurt me in a really bad way. How can I do that? How can I look to the interest of them? And it makes no sense at all until we know the God who put our interest above his own. Because he had an ultimate case against us to not put our interest above himself, and he did it anyway. And then when we know that, and when we join ourselves to this kind of Savior, we take on his character. The Bible tells us his Holy Spirit lives in us when we come to know and follow Jesus, so we become like him. As we grow closer to him, we become more like him. And so what does that mean? Well, it means we start to see the interest of others above ourselves more than we did before. Because this is who God is, and he lives in us if we are Christians. If you don't today think, man, I have a hard time putting anybody above myself, check your heart. Do you know, does God really live in you? So he's showing you the value and the worth of other people. And are you seeking him, or are you running from him? If you're not walking with him on a day-to-day basis, you're not going to value others. You're going to be about yourself. And so we also think, hey, look, this changes how we see other people. It changes our relationships, ultimately. Because our relationships are with other people, right? So think about how it changes our opinion of the church. We gather together, and we come into this place thinking, how can I help others worship God today? And no thought of myself, right? No thought of myself. I want to grow closer to God so I can help others. Am I putting their interest above my own here in this place? Changes our families, right? We interact with our spouses and our children thinking, how can I love my spouse? How can I serve my children? How can I put their interest above my own? How can I lay down my own desires to do my own thing and serve them? And ultimately point them to Christ in that, because it's Jesus who does that in us. Changes our work. We go to our jobs and we think, how can I serve people today at my job? How can I love the people that are going to come in this place? How can I love my coworkers? How can I serve my customer? All these things for the glory of God, because his interest, he put our interest above his own, and we want to put their interest above ours so that they can know this God. And then in every area of our life, it goes beyond just the physical, right? There is a spiritual mindfulness of the people around us. We are constantly aware of the spiritual needs and putting their spiritual needs above our needs. We see the depth of the people's need for God around us, And we think, I want to live in such a way that they know God because they have that need in their life. I want to put that interest above anything that might come in the way of that in my life. So we see, look, Jesus is the King who changes us by his mindfulness of other people, because when he comes into our life, we become mindful of others. And he gave up his authority. He gave up every right he had to not do that, to give us freedom, to give us forgiveness in his place. All right, so then we see, that's the first way here in John 18. Jesus is a different kind of king. All right? We also see King Jesus changes us by spiritual power, not physical power. In verses 10 through 14, we see that clearly in Peter's interaction with these people. So these people have come to arrest Jesus. You can imagine it's either run or fight in that moment. I'm either going to run or I'm going to fight. And Peter decides to fight. Now, could you imagine an earthly king with all his power, his might, the armies he rules over, his authority, his influence in the world, just willingly giving that up? It would be nonsense, right? Who wants to give up their power? Who wants to dismantle their military? At that point, you're asking for a revolution. You're asking to be invaded, right? It's not wise to do that if you are an earthly king. You need to make sure that things are in order and that you have power to defend yourself. And we need to defend our interests. But Jesus was different. His kingdom was not about protecting an earthly kingdom. He didn't defend himself with physical might, but with spiritual power from God. Peter, as I said, he's about to start. He wants to fight. And we see that starting in verse 10. Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, don't ask me where this disciple of Jesus got a sword, but he had one, drew it, struck the high priest's servant, and cut off his right ear. And if the kids were in vacation Bible school, they got to see a live rendition of that. And I thought about having John and Todd come up here and do that again for us, dress it up and everything, but they didn't want to do that today. So Peter strikes the ear of this guy that's trying to arrest Jesus. And Jesus says, verse 11, at that, Jesus said to Peter, "Put your sword away. Am I not to drink the cup the Father has given me?" And they go on and they tie up Jesus. Peter disappears. They arrest him. They take him to the father-in-law of Caiaphas. Caiaphas was the high priest, the ruler over all the Jewish people. So they take him basically to this authority figure in the Jewish life. Verse 14, Caiaphas was the one who had advised the Jews, it's better for one man to die for the people. He knows, hey, Jesus has a following, right? And this could turn out pretty ugly. If the Romans really want to fight, there's a bunch of people, bunch of Jewish people that are going to die because they cannot stand up against the Roman military, the Roman Empire. And so Caiaphas himself said, look, if we can get rid of this Jesus, it's better. It'll end everything. Little did he know that. He's pointing to a greater reality, right? Yes, it was better for one man to die for all the people, but not in a physical sense. Just like Jesus didn't rule with physical power, in a spiritual sense, we needed Jesus to die for us. And so the key truth here that Jesus is trying to get across to Peter and to us is, look, my weapons are not spiritual, or not physical, they are spiritual. All right? I don't fight physical battles, I fight spiritual battles, and that's much more important. Much more important. The truth is, Jesus had access to unlimited physical power. All right? He actually tells Peter in Matthew 26, this same incident, when Peter's ready to fight, he turns to Peter. John doesn't record this, but Matthew does, and he says, look, I could call down 12 legions of angels, 72,000 angels, if I wanted to physically take over. All right? I have the angels of heaven at my power. No Roman army can stand against that. But I'm not going to do it. I'm going to lay down my life. I'm going to drink the cup of God's wrath. So Jesus' most powerful weapon is not physical might, spiritual power within. We know that God's spiritual weapons ultimately have the power to change our hearts, to change us, to pull us out of the strongholds of sin in our life. Nothing else can do that. Only the power of God in us can change our lives and rescue us from sin. Because sin affects everything about us. And I don't have to tell you all that. You know that. You know how sin affects your marriage. You know how sin affects your parenting or your parents. You know how sin affects your job, how it affects where you live, your neighbors, everything about you, right? It causes fear. It causes anxiety and struggle in our heart of hearts. We wrestle, man, what's going on in my life? Right? We know sin has strongholds on our lives. And God's power is more powerful than that because his weapons are spiritual weapons. And that's what this passage gets at. When Jesus says, I'm going to drink the cup of the Father, he is literally taking on the punishment for our sins, the wrath of God. He's drinking that in on himself to give us spiritual freedom. That's what he's getting at. That's the power he's talking about. And the punishment we know for all sin before God is death. We stand before God condemned because of our sin. And Jesus died so you and I don't have to. He takes our condemnation on himself. So today, instead of us feeling, maybe you've been feeling like you are just fighting this constant battle. There's a spiritual battle in you that's affecting your life physically, and you know it. And Jesus offers you his kingly spiritual power in that battle you are facing today. And he offers you instead perfect peace in that battle. And some of you feel, man, I'm in the heat of that right now. I'm in the heat of it. And you know you need help. You know you need power that you don't have. You know you need peace. And Jesus is saying, I am that help. I am that peace. In spiritual battles that we have, the strongholds over us mentally and physically and emotionally, in our physical battles, the financial struggles, or the new place in life we find ourselves in, a new community, or don't know anybody, or in a new job, or the people we feel like we don't know where we are in our lives, the loss of a loved one, getting kids back in school, it's like craziness, right? And fighting the lines in the mornings, I've done that, dropping my kids off in the school. It's like just battle right from the very beginning of the day, man. I've got to I could get so angry at this line dropping my kids off. It's going to affect the rest of my day if I'm not careful, right? And so all of us, we face battles, some more serious than others. In John 14, Jesus tells us this. With his spiritual power, he says this: peace I leave with you. Peace. My peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Don't let your heart be troubled or fearful. Jesus offers his peace in the battle. In the battle. He's a king who gives it. And he has authority to give it. And a Christian life is about making this Jesus your king so you have it. Because without him as your king, you have no power from God. Sin will defeat you. And you will fight a losing battle. The end of John tells us how great the spiritual power of Jesus is. The fact that he drinks God's wrath, he is arrested, he is crucified, but he conquers it through rising from the dead. That is power. Rising from the dead after taking on the sins of the world. And that is what he's offering you. This spiritual power, this resurrection power, means that God can work in your life today. And he can make you new when he becomes your king. He may leave you in the battle for a time, but he offers to be king in that battle. And he's a king that cannot lose that battle. So keep trusting him. Keep holding on to him in the midst of it. So we see Jesus is a different kind of king. Right? He fights with spiritual weapons, ultimate spiritual power that ultimately will rule and reign over any physical power. And third, we see in this passage in John 18, King Jesus changes us by speaking boldly and truthfully. He changes us by speaking boldly and truthfully. Look, in this world, how true, how honest are kings and rulers around us? We can't trust a thing they say, it seems like sometimes. That's why we have all these jokes about politicians, right? Kings and rulers manipulate situations. They manipulate conversations. They withhold key truths in order to get ahead, to gain the upper hand on whoever's against them, whether it be another nation or whatever. Countless examples of this. I mean, I could literally spend days giving examples, but just a few. Nixon and Watergate, right? Bill Clinton and the scandal that he went through. Worse, on a much worse level, Hitler had this huge propaganda machine that just fed lies to the people, and they believed it. Right? Saddam Hussein, Kim Jong-un in North Korea, how many people actually trust that guy? Right? Nobody. Right? Nobody trusts him. We can't believe people. And the truth is, it's not just kings that struggle with telling the truth. A few weeks ago, we went through the 10 Commandments, and we talked about the command, do not lie. Right? We all struggle with that. We all want to say whatever sounds good to us and whatever sounds good to other people. And it's a basic struggle for all of us. We get in a tough situation, things look dangerous, and we just want to find a way out, any way out, even if it means twisting the truth just a little bit. And we see that throughout this passage. We see the contrast of the people that Jesus is dealing with and their lack of boldness and their lack of truth. All right, let me just show you some examples. First, we see Peter. All right, Peter here, the same guy who was about to strike the ear off, or he did strike the ear off, this person who came to arrest Jesus. What did he do? Just a few verses later, he denies Jesus 3 times in a row. Straight up, people ask him, hey, you're one of his followers, aren't you? And 3 times he says, no, I don't know him. How's that speaking the truth? How's that being bold? It's not, right? What about Jewish leaders? They're sneaky snakes is what they are, right? They're trying to get this guy arrested so they don't have to deal with him anymore. They're threatened by his power. And so what do? They kind of arrest him in the middle of the night, not out in the open, in the middle of the night in some quiet little garden so people don't see him. And they bring him to before the high priest, and they're questioning him. They slap him around, and they send him off to the Roman ruler because they don't have to deal with it, trying to manipulate the situation so they don't take the ultimate blame for it. Right? That's not truthful. And then we see Pilate. Here's the guy who we're going to see in a minute. He questions Jesus. And as Chad read earlier, he questions Jesus. He doesn't find any fault with him. I don't find any fault with this, he told the crowd. And yet he's going to ultimately condemn him to death. How is that being bold and standing for what is right? It's not, right? He's giving in. He's trying to please people. And God sets up all this to show that Jesus is different. He speaks boldly and truthfully in all of his interactions. He faces up to those who arrest him. Look at this, verse 20, before the high priest and the Jewish leaders. I have spoken openly to the world. I've not tried to hide. Jesus answered him, I have always taught in the synagogue and in the temple, most public places he could, where all the Jews congregate, and I haven't spoken anything in secret. Why do you question me? Question those who heard what I told them. Look, they know what I said. The people that come to arrest me, he literally goes out and says, who are you looking for, Jesus? Well, that's me. I'm trying to hide. That's me. Just take me. All right? And it's honest, bold, truth. And then talking with Pilate, verse 36. He tells Pilate, look, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight. So I wouldn't be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here. You are a king then? Pilate asked, you say that I'm a king, Jesus replied, which is basically an idiom that says, yep, you're right, you said it. He's agreeing with him. I was born for this, and I have come into this world for this, to testify to the truth. Jesus came to speak the truth. And everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. What is truth? Said Pilate. So we see right here, look, he's just facing everybody who talks to him and just being blunt and honest with them. This is who I am. There shouldn't be any doubt, any questions. And he knew, hey, his life was on the line. Right? He's under arrest. He's condemned in verse 39 and 40 as a criminal, and a criminal is released. He's condemned to death, and yet he still speaks the truth in the face of death, in the face of knowing all things that are about to happen. So instead of saving his own skin, he tells the truth. And that, Jesus tells us, is why he left heaven. He tells Pilate, that's why he left heaven. I've come to testify to the truth. Everything about me is about the truth. Is your life true today? Or are you hiding things in your life? Jesus came to reveal everything. You don't have to hide when he's around. In the midst of all the lies of the world, Jesus came to speak even when it meant his life, to speak the truth. And that's how much he wanted you and I to know the truth. And what is the truth? He is the truth. Well, what does that mean? Well, Jesus is the one through whom you are made. Jesus is the one through whom all creation is made. He knows all things. He knows your life. The truth is that there is a God that we are accountable to who wants to know you. That's the truth. And yet we are separated from him. As the truth, Jesus is the one we need to know. We need to know the truth. We need to know Jesus. You want to know the truth about your life today? You need to know Jesus. You need to know how he speaks into the things you're facing. All right. In this situation, Jesus, he's God, right? He has power over everything that's going on. He has power over Pilate. He actually tells Pilate, look, you would have no power if I didn't give it to you. That's the truth about your power and your limited effectiveness in this world. Jesus he alone has the truth. And he is the truth. And he reveals the truth to you and I. And he makes sense of our lives so that we can really live. He tells us when we believe this truth, when we believe who he is and we submit ourselves to it, John 8:32, the truth will set you free. Do you feel free today? Jesus is the truth that will set you free from the change you feel. And this reminds us, look, life is more than the best or the worst things that we're going through right now. It's more than that. Life is knowing the truth of God in those things. In those things. In everything you face, knowing the truth of Christ in them. That's what it's about. Because the truth is, God is bigger and more powerful than what you see around you, what you're feeling, what you're going through. And he will have ultimate victory over those things. So what in your world feels powerful over you today? Addiction, Toyota, where you work, illness, family brokenness, whatever it is. What feels powerful over you? Well, the truth is, God is bigger than those things. The truth is, God rules over those things. He reigns over those things, and he works all things for our good if we know Christ. And nothing can compare to him. And this is why Jesus came, to show us this, to show you this truth. To know that, hey, you are born not with this power in your life, not with this king ruling over your life. You have separated yourself from him by your sin. And yet God was not content to allow that to continue forever. That's why Christ came to reveal, hey, we have this need for God, and I'm going to lay down my life so you can know him. And you can know this power in your life right now. You can live with it. And you can live with hope, knowing that the things you are facing aren't the final word. Jesus is the final word. And you simply must acknowledge this is who Jesus is. I need him in my life. I need his forgiveness of my sin. I want to follow him and let him rule over these things. He will rule over these things in my life. That's what it means to be a Christian. He is our king. And here's the other thing. When Christ frees us and he forgives us as our king, then we are free to boldly speak the truth. Because we know that's the most important thing we could say. I mean, so often I have conversations, and I've dealt with this myself. We are afraid to tell the truth to people around us about who Jesus really is and what's really going on in their life. That there is sin underneath all this stuff, right? But the truth is, when we know that Jesus is the truth, that's the most important thing we could say to them. That's what they need more than anything else, is him. So when we experience the freedom of Christ and the truth of Christ in our life, we want to speak that to others. If you're not speaking it to others, you're not holding on to the truth of what's really important, what's really real in this world. You're not seeing it in the need of others in their lives. So I simply want to close by asking you, is Jesus your king? We see he is a totally different king. He's the king we need, but we have to make him our king. Is he your king, or is something else your king today? We live in a physical world, yes. We live with many physical problems in our lives today, yes. But those problems are temporary. They're temporary. Jesus offers to be the king of your spiritual life, which will overcome and overrule your physical life. Physical life is temporary, spiritual life is eternal. And the spiritual life has power over the physical life here. Jesus is a king of a kingdom that is so much greater than anything this world can offer you. It's the spiritual kingdom that changes you from the inside out. We try to change our outward circumstances all the time, don't we? He changes us from the inside out. There's a heart problem that we need fixed. Christ is the one who fixes our hearts. Is he the king that you have submitted your life to? Are you living for this king? Maybe you said, yeah, he's going to be my king, and then we go off and we have our own kingdom. Right? Commit today, recommit yourself, live with him as your king. No one else, nothing else. He loves you. He sacrificed for you. He was arrested and crucified for you because he wants you to know his power, his spiritual power in your life today. Let's pray together. God, we thank you that you are a king unlike any king in this world. That you're a king who loves us, who is mindful of us, who fights with spiritual weapons and not physical, merely physical. A king who speaks truth that we desperately need to hear because we are searching for answers and only you have the truth. That we need Christ, we need his forgiveness, we need his presence in us. God, show us that today. Help us to live in your truth and for your truth. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.